previous class, we started off with consumer behavior, and we understood that one of the pillars of consumer behavior is understanding the affordability of the consumer. And the affordability of the consumer is measured in consumer behavior topic by something called budget lines and budget sets. Okay. We closely analyzed the budget line and the budget sets, and we did a few problems in order to understand the topic very well. Today, we go a step further, talking about the other foundation aspect of consumer behavior, and that is called the preference of the consumer. The preference of the consumer. All right. Now, only affordability in itself will not enable us to talk about the behavior of the consumer and the optimal choice that the consumer will be making in the market. Okay. It's affordability coupled with the preference of the consumer, which will enable us to understand that, okay, the consumer prefers these bundles to the other bundles. And looking at the affordability, we can then comment about which bundle the consumer is going to ultimately choose. Okay. So only affordability is an incomplete picture. Only preference is an incomplete picture. Only when these two are combined can we talk about the optimal consumption bundle. Okay. So preference of the consumer was something very, very theoretical when the economists looked at it. Now, the economists basically said that rationally or commonsensically, there are a few properties that the preference of the consumer should satisfy. Okay. In order for us to be able to find out the optimal consumption, there are a few properties of the preference of the consumer. Number one property is the property of completeness. Now, what is completeness? Completeness basically means that the consumer is exactly aware between two bundles which bundle he or she will prefer. So completeness basically means that given any bundle, suppose there is a bundle x0, y0, and there is a bundle x1, y1. So between these two bundles, the consumer is exactly aware that whether I like x0, y0 over x1, y1, or I am indifferent between the two, or I prefer an x1, y1 over an x0, y0. So the consumer is not confused in any aspect. The consumer exactly knows that, okay, I like this over this. So ऐसा नहीं होगा where the consumer will say that between, say, the bundle 2, 3 and 3, 2, I don't know which one I like more. I don't know dictionary से out है. Okay. Because if I get into the I don't know factor, then you can never comment about the optimal choice of the consumer. Because if you do not know whether a consumer will like a bundle A over a bundle B, then how can you choose for the consumer? Right? So there is always complete information. This you can also call it no confusing bundles, or there is complete information about all the bundles possible out there in the market. So the property of completeness is something that we will expect a consumer's preference to have. All right. Number two, the property of transitivity. This is again a very commonsensical property. It basically says that if the consumer prefers, say, the bundle x0, y0 over the bundle x1, y1, and I know that the consumer also prefers the bundle x1, y1 over some other bundle x2, y2, then in essence, the consumer should prefer x0, y0 over x2, y2. Okay. This is the property of transitivity. This is again a very logical property of the preference of a consumer, which the economist put out there. So the economist says that completeness is a property which the preference of the consumer I will expect to satisfy. Transitivity is a property which I will expect the consumer to satisfy, because if he or she likes a bundle over some other bundle, so I like the bundle A over the bundle B, I have the information that I like the bundle B over the bundle C. So it has to be the case that the consumer will like the bundle A over the bundle C. Okay, right? If I see that the consumer is actually preferring the bundle C over the bundle A, then I can safely say that the consumer is an illogical consumer. I like an ice cream over a Coke. I like a Coke over a chocolate. So automatically I like the ice cream over the chocolate, right? It's not the case that I like the chocolate over the ice cream when this is the case. So there is consistency and there is common sense behind the choices that the consumer is making. Okay, these are the first two properties of the preference of a consumer. Third, more is better. This is also called the property of non-satiation. What does this mean? This means that if I increase my consumption of X or Y, that is, if I increase my X consumption, keeping my Y consumption the same, this bundle will be preferred over this bundle. So if I only increase X by some amount, which is positive, here I have only given an example of one. Okay, if I'm increasing X by some amount, the new bundle shall be preferred over the older bundle. More is better. More is preferred to less. Non-satiation basically means that the good X and Y are both increasing my utility, are both preferred to me. So if I increase my X or my Y, this will also hold. If I increase my X, obviously preferred over this. If I increase my Y, obviously preferred over this again. So more is preferred to less. This is again a property which the consumer should satisfy. What am I talking about? I am only talking about what an economist thought at a very theoretical level. Okay, so initially when a person wanted to talk about the behavior of the consumer, they firstly set up the affordability. Secondly, they wanted to set up the preference. Now, in order to set up the preferences, these are the initial things that came in the mind of the economist who was actually setting up the model. So the preferences of the consumer should satisfy the property of A, completeness, where they are not confused between any two bundles. The second property that it should be satisfying is the property of transitivity, where if I like a bundle A over a bundle B over a bundle C, I will automatically like the bundle A over the bundle C. And thirdly, more is better. So if I increase the consumption of any of the two commodities, the new bundle will be preferred over the old bundle. If both increases, obviously it is better, right? If both increases, obviously it is a more preferred. Okay, if at least one of X or Y is increasing, it is a preferred bundle. This is a very interesting property which again an economist laid out. The economist said that in the real world, I observe people like moderateness. I observe that people like averages over extreme values. Okay, so given two bundles A and B, which are indifferent to each other, some average of the bundles A and B will be preferred over the bundle A and B. Okay. Now, to put this in a very practical sense, if I say that I like the bundle 1/8 as much as I like the bundle 8/1, I like the bundle 1/8 as much as I like the bundle 8/1. Okay. Now, an average of this will be very simple. Let me take the simple average. That is, if I take half of the first bundle plus half of the second bundle, this basically gives me half of 1 plus 8, half of 8 plus 1, which is basically 9 by 2 comma 9 by 2. What this property says is 9 by 2 comma 9 by 2 will be preferred over the bundle 8 comma 1 and 1 comma 8. This is the property of convexity, that I like average consumption over extreme consumptions, or averages is preferred over extremes. Okay, so moderateness is something that the economists observed in the real world, which is but obvious, right? You don't like extreme things. You don't like a dish which has too much of sugar or too much of salt. You like it in moderation. Okay, so this is again a very empirical thing that an economist actually noticed. And these are four basic properties which the economist put out there, that, okay, I'll want the consumer to have at least these four properties over their preference. There is one more property which was actually put in by a mathematician. The mathematician said that for the sake of completeness, he said that it should also satisfy the property of reflexivity, which basically means that any bundle A cannot be inferior to itself, which is extremely commonsensical. Okay, it's something which is more of a mathematical property rather than a logical or a commonsensical property. Okay, that is the property of reflexivity, where no bundle can be inferior to itself. Okay, no bundle can be inferior to itself. Okay, so that is but obvious. It's a very, very obvious property, but it's something that enables us to look at a utility function, give it a number. Okay, so these are the basic properties that an economist thought in their head for the preference of the consumer. Now, in order to build up a model, obviously the economist needs the help of mathematics. Okay, even if I consider a market, okay, even if I talk about a producer, even if I talk about any sort of a consumer, in order to maximize the profit of the producer, I'll have to do it mathematically by maxima and minima. In order to find out the optimal consumption of X and Y, that happens if I maximize the preference subject to the budget line. That is a constraint optimization problem. So wherever I look in economics, there is a huge aspect of mathematics behind it. So all the economists went behind the mathematicians, telling them, okay, I have set these preference properties in my head. Now you need to tell me how to put this into a mathematical format. So all these properties, the economist went, they put all the properties in a bag, they gave the bag to the mathematician, and they asked the mathematician that, give me a mathematical formulation where all these are satisfied for the preference of a consumer. What the mathematician instantly churned out was the concept of utility function. Okay.